Welcome to It's Personal, Finance Canada. I'm Christine Conway.
And I'm Cameron Conway.
And this podcast is a very personal look at personal finance in Canada. Welcome to It's Personal Finance Canada. I'm Christine Conway here with Cameron Conway. And if you're in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, or the Yukon, feel free to find us at Braun Financial, braunfinancial.com. This week, I finished Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The second part of this book is around public victory. So this is where we're making the move from independence to interdependence.
Yeah, so last week's episode was a pretty big success, and Christine finally finished the book. We actually got the kids to sleep properly a couple times. So last week we talked about the inward. We're going to talk about the external today. So when we look at is last week we talked about the internal screaming. Now let's talk about the external screaming.
Oh my goodness. Well, last week was really interesting for me because, like you said, Cam, it is internal. So we get to work on things that are important to ourselves. We get to decide, prioritize, evaluate how we're spending our time, our energy, and our emotions. And this part here is the part that really challenged me because now we're adding in other people. And of course, anytime you add in other people, things start to get a little bit messy.
Yeah, it's kind of the old adage of like how you judge yourself by your intentions. Other people judge you by your actions. So you learn these skills, you go through these things, you kind of pull it all inside and you think you're doing a great job. But if no one can actually see the good work you're doing, you're wasting your time.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, you can feel like you are crushing it and then have someone tell you that their perception is nothing like what you thought you were projecting.
Everyone's crushing until someone else crushes them.
Oh my goodness, a very humbling experience. I've been there personally and not that long ago. So it's true. It is very, very important not just to judge ourselves to improve ourselves, but to also understanding how we're walking through the world, how we're influencing the people around us, and how people are experiencing us as humans. So I'm going to pull this back to someone who knows better than I do, Stephen Covey in his book here, and we're going to talk about his 3 core concepts: the emotional bank account, thinking win-win, and seeking first to understand, then be understood.
Hopefully I'm not jumping ahead a little bit, but is there interest charges on that emotional bank account?
Well, every transaction matters more than we ever thought, and this is the interesting part because as we go through life, so much of it seems mundane. It's repetitive. You feel like I've been here before. I've done this before. I'm on autopilot. I don't even remember my drive to work this morning. But when we're relating to other people, every action can create a withdrawal or a deposit, according to Stephen Covey. And this book, actually, I thought it was really funny. It reminded me immediately of a book that you and I got, Cam, when we first got married. It was called His Needs, Her Needs by Willard Harley, originally published in 1986. And we got this as a wedding gift, and I hadn't looked at it a long time. So I kind of pulled it off my shelf, thumbed through it, and sure enough, Harley has a concept called a love bank for couples. And it's really to determine how well within a coupled relationship you meet each other's needs, and basically how long will you be together long term as a result of this.
Yeah, it's one of those books that kind of challenges how you look at yourself and having to actually think about other people and how what could be a normal behavior, a normal quirk or tick could annoy someone else to no end.
It's so true. And it's not just those annoyances, although those can compound as well. But on the positive or on the proactive side, it's requiring you to have a deep understanding of your partner.
So, yes, it annoys Christine whenever I'm right all the time.
Which is truly all the time. We have a running joke here that he's always right, but I find it out a little bit later. So as it goes.
So in other words, patience inevitably pays off.
In a long-term relationship, it absolutely does. But this is the point. We tend to give each other what we want in relationship. And this is something that I saw across both books, whether it was Harley's or Covey's, this concept that we need to understand their needs. And there was a line in Stephen Covey's book that basically said, that need of that other person, meeting that need of that other person has to be as important to us as that person is, which basically means if you see this as a way of getting closer to them, of extending the longevity and the happiness in your marriage or your relationship, then this is something that you will absolutely want to prioritize, even if it doesn't feel natural or intuitive to you because it's not how you're wired. So it's understanding the differences between yourself and your partner in a way that helps you relate to each other better.
Yeah, and this kind of plays into personal finance because this actually applies to personal finance. Different people have different spending habits, different goals, different mindsets, different preconceived notions about money and finances and budgeting. And if you don't take time to figure out what the other person in the relationship thinks about those things, you will inevitably butt heads.
Well, that's right. And let's tie it into something that Stephen Covey said as well, which is that we can view every problem as an opportunity to build that emotional bank account. And
I'm pretty sure Homer Simpson called it a crisis-opportunity. Crisis opportunity? No.
You know what? Sometimes they come hand in hand. It's all perspective anyways, is it not? But let's get to a financial example because, of course, this is a personal finance show. So let's make it about a couple like Cam and I. Great example. So let's say I have a tendency when I get stressed out, when I'm feeling overwhelmed or I'm feeling down, to overspend on whatever it might be. So it wasn't in the budget, but it's going to make me feel better. And let's say that my partner is all about goals and they are very laser focused on we have to get here as quickly as possible. Spare all discretionary spending. Let's just laser in. Let's get this thing done. And I know that when I make this purchase, he's going to be or she's going to be stressed. They are going to feel angry and they're going to feel justified in being angry because they think that they deserve this end goal or this end result. So to apply this concept of the emotional bank account to a financial situation, where were the deposits and where were the withdrawals? What does this actually look like? If you think about interactions as transactional in whether they're building your love or depleting it. So the obvious two actions here was the act of overspending. There was also the emotional reaction of the partner, but I think even more important was that anticipation that the person who overspent felt, and maybe even a bit of guilt in their choice, because that anticipation, positive or negative, still had emotional impact. It still had consequences that were very, very real in that couple's relationship. So in that scenario, the other party didn't have to say a word, but based on past experiences and interactions, there was a presupposition of what was going to happen. And because that was negative, as we fall into these patterns, it had an impact.
Yes, this is the kind of unspoken conversation people have with themselves when they see, oh, they're walking to me in that certain walk they have with that certain look on their face. Here it comes. Then you just jump to conclusions. And sometimes they could surprise you, have nothing to do with the negative. But this is the problem. You can fall into the trap where you kind of default setting to, I'm in trouble.
Well, and I think when you've been with someone for a while and you get to know their mannerism, their tells, what upsets them, what doesn't, it's funny, even if at your core you don't want to upset that other person, it's still going to happen, right? So this awareness that we can bring to these interactions and how they affect at a core, how that emotional bank account is doing, I think is actually really important to the long-term maintenance of that relationship. So how do we fix this? I mean, Stephen Covey gave us some great ideas with his next core concept that we're going to talk about today. And this is the think win-win. And this was, he kind of called it a philosophy of human interaction, which I liked. So I'm going to take this right out of the book. He had 6 outcomes in our interactions with other people. And I'm just going to kind of paraphrase them as I understood them. And they were as follows. So win-win, where you and I both get what we want, we walk away happy. Win-lose, where I get what I want, but you do not. Lose-win, you get what you want, but I have conceded, so I don't. Lose-lose, nobody's winning here today. Win, I might get what I want, but in this scenario, I actually don't care about the outcome for the other person. And no deal is we walk away or I walk away.
Then suddenly Howie Mandel jumps out from the closet.
Deal or no deal. There you go. Needed a culture reference. It was getting a little dry here.
My pop culture references are all about a decade out of date.
Yeah, you know what? It's telling the time, the decade we come from. So there you go. So I got to thinking about it, and win-lose, in my mind anyways, seems to be that more common one, most often used. And it's very authoritarian. It's I get what I want, you do not. And it by nature is going to create emotional bank account withdrawals, which means it's going to affect that relationship negatively.
But how can I win if no one else loses? Only one person gets the Stanley Cup. It better be Winnipeg this year.
Oh my goodness. This isn't all about sports, even though it feels like human relationships are contact sports at sometimes. But as it goes. But okay, well, hey, sure. Let's think about it as work, right? Sports aside. A working environment is another win-lose type scenario for a lot of people, or a lot of people feel that way. When an employer's mentality is, okay, I'm paying you to be here, so you're going to do what I want, as opposed to how can we work together? How can we benefit the company? And how can we also develop your skills and advance your career? That whole people-centric versus profit-centric mentalities, it's interesting how those are things that we kind of accept, right? Because you're accepting your pay, your compensation as, okay, I now need this job, I need to be employed, and I accept the terms of this arrangement. But why do we default to this in our personal relationships? And I was just kind of thinking, well, maybe it's just because it's the easiest one. Like, you don't really have to think about it that hard. You're just focusing on your immediate need or want. You're not considering the other person's feelings or how your actions will impact them. You can be as selfish as you want. You can put your own agenda first. But none of that will work if you want to keep the relationship long term.
Another cheery message for this Easter season.
We're all about the cheer over here. But yeah, like I said, in a professional relationship, it can be cut and dry. But when you want a relationship to continue, how do you have to treat it differently? And I thought about it from the other perspective of when you're in a long-term relationship, and like you said, Cam, sometimes you can just kind of see how a person is thinking or feeling or what it might be by the tells, the mannerisms that you're used to. Sometimes, knowingly or unknowingly, we use that, having our win and having a release of that emotions, even if they're negative. It makes you feel better temporarily. So let's say in our prior example about finances, I'm the person that's getting angry at my spouse for overspending on Warhammer or whatever it might be. And all of a sudden...
Or personal development book.
Guilty as charged. How many do we go over on the show? But that's for all of our benefits here.
Yes, what you see behind me is only half the library. There's a couple of shelves in the upstairs, and there's another one that you can't see over there, too.
Mm-hmm. It's an extensive hobby of mine. But as it goes, so in our example, I'm the person that's getting angry at the other party in the relationship. And if I am not careful when I'm choosing my words, and if I express my anger towards my partner, I'm going to feel better because I've released that emotion, all that frustration. Rather than taking some quiet time processing it myself, I've released it. But they're on the receiving end of that. That does not feel good. This can deplete an emotional account bank balance, and it can hurt the relationship over the long term, even if that's not what I had intended.
So you're saying then the loudest voice doesn't just automatically win anymore?
You know what? It's funny to think even the changes generationally as we become more aware of psychology and as we become more aware of the impact that we have on each other, even with our kids when we raise our voices or when we default to anger or when we have that authoritarian style, there can be negative impacts over the long term. And to a marriage, I mean, look at the divorce rates, right? To the fact that it is hard to stay married. But I think a lot of that is just the constant stress, the daily aggravations, and these things that become so routine that maybe shouldn't be. So lose-win, let's talk about that other scenario. So let's flip the script on our example. Let's say that I'm the person that wants to do that spending. I want to buy something because I'm not in a good place. But now, rather than doing what I want, I'm going to consider what my partner wants. I'm going to make a concession. So he's not even aware that I'm doing this, but in my mind, I'm having this conversation where I'm not going to do that thing. I'm not going to buy what I want for the good of the relationship, for the good of the marriage or the partnership. But this is not a perfect, happy outcome, even though it may be an emotional response, like we don't have that big angry thing. But it is, if I make too many concessions too many times, thinking that I'm being happy and considerate and good for our relationship, it could damage my relationship to him because I'm losing those feelings. I'm depleting my own understanding of what I need, and making those concessions, I could be building resentment. And then down the road, if I decide I don't want to try anymore, my partner could be blindsided.
Yeah, it doesn't actually count as a win-win situation if the other person's eye starts to twitch and they just kind of stammer off afterwards.
Oh my goodness. Well, it actually made me think about something I had read about a while ago called the walk-away wife syndrome. And this is usually someone, maybe mid-40s, midlife, where the woman, and it was proportionally, it doesn't have to be the woman, but proportionally it was the woman more than the man, wants the man to change. Tries to get a change, tries to get a change, tries to get a change. It doesn't happen. And it's just accepted that things are not going to change. And one day she decides, I'm just going to quietly make my arrangements. And then she's just gone. And the other partner in this scenario could be completely blindsided. And both of them missed a chance to see what could have been if it was talked about, if it was addressed. Could the relationship have survived this? Could it have been negotiated? And this very much feels like a lose-win. Like, I've conceded too many times. He has won in this scenario by not even being aware that he's won. And it has just impacted the relationship so much over time that relationship, the love balance goes to the point where I'm not in love anymore. I'm looking for other options. I'm looking for a way out. I'm looking for somewhere new to live. And I close the door and move on.
Yeah, so when it kind of comes to this emotional bank account, it's not like a real bank account where you kind of have like your full balance sheet of ins and outs. You just don't even know sometimes. A lot of times the good things that go in could even just be subconscious things you do, and things can be taken out of that account whether you are aware of it or not. And it could just be things that someone else just doesn't want to see you do anymore. And so this is all just a lot of work, and it would be easier if you had that little like handwritten statement book like you used to. Well, you still do if you have a business with certain banks, but that's kind of gone on the personal side.
Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, and lose-win can be a lot more overt than what I've kind of described here too. But let's pull it back to our couple, and let's pull it back to our financial example. What could they have done to avoid this scenario at all? How can we get through this so that it doesn't become an issue? And I would start by saying that if the emotional bank is already depleted or very, very low to the point where there's a lot of tension or there's a lot of stress in the relationship, it might make sense to fix that first, especially if money has been a point of contention in the past. So rather than going at your partner about, oh my God, we need to get on the same page about this, tell them you love them. Do the sweet things that they need from you as they need to receive them, not as you want to give them, like we said in our first point.
Yeah, when it comes to this kind of emotional bank account, there are no credit cards. You may use your actual credit card to try and fix things, but there's no credit cards and credit and loans when it comes to this kind of stuff emotionally.
Credit cards buys flowers and nights out and all the sweet things, massages, jewelry, candy. There it goes. Or I suppose it could go both ways, right? So whatever it is that the person loves. But yes, this idea here is that sometimes in financial matters, you have to kind of ease in, especially if it's been a point of tension. But let's set some clear parameters around what this couple could have done. And so let's say the issue was that one of the partners wanted to buy a house. And he's like, this is our focus. We're going to go all in on this goal. So in our example, the partner is feeling like the other partner, the overspender, is sabotaging their ability to get what they want. So what do? They could sit down. I mean, you have to talk about it, right? There's no way around this part. We have to have a mutual understanding that's agreed on. But you could create something like an allowance that both parties has to spend, no questions asked. You could say that maybe there's a dollar amount or an upper range or limit on what either partner could spend before it has to be discussed. Or, I mean, some people just straight up prefer to keep their finances separate so that they don't have that feeling of someone looking over their shoulder, or maybe it just alleviates these small points of tension and stress. But I will say that both parties absolutely need to contribute a set amount to the shared goal. Otherwise, the one party is going to feel like I'm doing everything here. You're doing what you want. I feel now that I'm losing and you're winning because my hard work is benefiting you. Whereas the other partner might be like, well, I'm thinking more short term. These goals are actually more important to me. So again, discussion will get you back on that same page.
Yeah, if you don't do this together with some sort of formula, then you'll just end up living in that house by yourself.
Aww.
You kind of need some like mutually assured dedication and some sort of plan to keep this equitable and still working together.
Yeah, so let's go right back to the source. What does Stephen Covey say about what is needed to create a win-win? So he kind of distilled it down for us. Desired results. So this is the what and when that we're trying to accomplish. Guidelines. So what are the parameters that we're going to work within to get this thing done? Resources. What type of support are we going to have to do this? What is available to us to accomplish this? Accountability. Are we both clear on what is being evaluated? What are we trying to do? How are we going to hold each other accountable in a way that does not create more tension and more stress? And finally, consequences, which is really what will happen as a result of fill in the blank.
Yeah, and if that's kind of hard to remember, just remember it's a very simple anagram of DeGrack.
What? DeGrack?
DeGrack.
Oh my goodness. You know what? No one is going to be saying that one 3 times fast. And no one will know what you're talking about if you just throw that out there.
Honey, I love you, but we need to DeGrack today.
Oh my goodness. But sure. I think what actually might be a little bit more helpful is walking through the steps. And I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the consequences part, because we think about consequences as being good or bad, right? But it's really more about what will happen next. If then that. If this, then that. Or because. So if you keep this agreement, if we make an agreement, you and I, Cam, and we keep it, we have an end result and we'll get there together. If there is a violation of the agreement, what is the consequence? And do we both want the privilege more than we want the consequence? And this is not one party imposing something on the other person, not at all. It's the natural consequence that will occur. Like in our example, maybe the goal is delayed now by X number of months or whatever it might be. So it's not about being vindictive in any imagination, but it's more about what will naturally happen. What is the course that will follow if you set this in motion?
Yeah, so the ultimate goal is to come up with as many kind of win-win scenarios in your relationship, in your budgeting, and all these other things to kind of have that healthy relationship where, like I said, one person isn't constantly twitching and walking away, but you want to make this work. So it takes time, it takes dedication, it takes true negotiation, because true negotiation is both parties come out to be somewhat of a winner. And it's not always just I win, you lose, I win. Or you get an arbitrator that just charges you lots of money, and then divorce court is expensive and it's a lot of paperwork.
It's a lot of paperwork we don't want to have to do. So how do we solve this problem? Perfect transition into concept number 3. So this is Stephen Covey's seek first to understand, then be understood. And it's another exercise of putting the other person first. It's about empathy. It's about trying to understand what they're going through and trying to see life through their filter. Because we all have this story, like we all have our own narratives, right? We all have the way we see the world based on the experiences that we've had. But someone else's experiences, what they bring into the relationship, is going to be so completely different. You're different people. You grew up differently. There's so many variables. Even now, career, preferences, all of these things can have an impact on how they see things and how your viewpoints may differ, even if you feel like you're aligned on the bigger issues.
Yeah, everyone kind of has their own backstory, their own narrative. Everyone plays a different theme song in their head when they walk into a room and narrate to themselves. We're all just kind of individuals. So it's just taking time to see what is it about this other person that makes them that individual and how can we better understand.
Right. And I think that that is absolutely key. We are seeking to understand. Most people are trying to influence. And while influence is good, or it can be good when you're positive about it, you are trying to really understand sincerely where that person is coming from. I think most of us in this world these days, I mean, you can sniff out a fake anywhere, right? Like if someone is not sincere, if they're pushing their own agenda, if you feel manipulated in any way, we shut down pretty quick. We recognize it, you feel violated. And Stephen Covey said in the book that to influence others, you have to be open to being influenced yourself. So there has to be this level of vulnerability on both sides of the table that is necessary. And when you think about that, that is the core component of a meaningful relationship.
Yeah, and Christine understood me a lot better when she finally realized I just play Ride of the Valkyries in my head every single time I walk into a room.
And that he's right anyway. We have a whole song about it. We won't sing it here.
Well, maybe I'll put together some outtakes one day. We'll go over it.
So what builds those feelings of trust? What makes someone feel safe in a relationship? I would say more than anything, for me anyways, it's consistency. So if I have someone new in my life or someone that I'm looking to get closer to and open myself up to and have that certain level of vulnerability that you don't have with most people, I'll just kind of sit back and see how they are doing for a while, in the sense of I'll just watch their interactions. Like, are they kind? Do they care about other outcomes for other people? What happens when they don't get what they want? And this is just more, maybe it's a little bit of hypervigilance, but at the same time, it's understanding where someone is coming from and trying to understand their lens. Are they emotionally aware? Can they? Do they have the capacity? Do they want to be vulnerable in this relationship? So all of those things matter, and they matter a lot. Because if we truly want to understand their perspective, we have to try to understand their experiences and their filters and their stories. And empathetic listening is the key to doing this. It's listening to understand. It's listening not to answer. It's listening not to just solve a problem, which is kind of that default mode that we all kind of fall into. And it's listening in the sense that if you've been in a relationship for a while and this isn't someone new, I mean, man, oh man, like we found ourselves sometimes, you can get in the same loops where you have the same conversation or the same fight over and over again, and your brain recognizes that pattern. It's familiar. So before your partner has even begun to go down that road and air their grievance or whatever it might be, you're in defensive mode, and you know what the answer is because you've done this 100 times, and that is not listening. That is not empathy. That is not caring. That is not putting them above yourself and making sure that they are taken care of before you try to get someone else to understand you. So, like I said, this is why long-term relationships are difficult, but they are so worth it. And working together with a partner, especially on your finances, can have these incredible synergies, which is another concept of his that we're not even going to have time to get into today. But we hope you like the content today around Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, the second part of the book, and the emotional bank account, thinking win-win, and seeking first to understand and then be understood. And hopefully these give you some more tools, as they did us. I mean, we're challenging ourselves here too, to look at your core relationships a little bit differently, and to understand the sensitivities in the relationship and in the way that you're communicating to your partner, to the person that you say you love more than anyone else in the world. And if you'd like help navigating these difficult financial conversations. I say all the time, I'm more of a therapist, I feel like, than a financial planner some days.
We should be charging extra for that.
It's just fine. I love psychology. I love seeing couples interact, and I love seeing how much their relationship can improve once they truly get on the same page about their money. So if that's you and you fit in one of the provinces, not fit, in one of the provinces that we're licensed, feel free to find us at braunfinancial.com. Until next time, take care.
And all the best at decacking.
Caw. Sorry, too much of a pause there.